It all started November 2018 when I got the dreaded knock at the door from a traffic officer passing on the awful news that my brother Paul had been killed that afternoon. He'd been hit by a lorry while he was on his bike. That was the offence that was told to me. It was that day was it's one of those certain days in your life gets ingrained into your mind. 26th of November 2018 is that day. It was strange. I'm serving police officer with Westmeads Police. I've done that knock at the door way too many times. You're going to turn that family's life upside down. You never expect that knock to be at your door. And that afternoon was just, surreal. Home from work, great day at work, getting dinner ready for the family. To see somebody at the door that I vaguely knew from work, in passing. And it's that thing where everybody says, when a police officer's giving you bad news. I didn't clock that. I see police officers every day, maybe that's the reason why. But there's no other way of they had to say it. He told me Paul had been hit by a lorry, HGV, killed instantly, which I suppose I look back on and I'm thankful for that part. Paul wouldn't have known anything. It transpired that he'd gone to pick up some parts for his mountain bike. He was coming back from Wolverhampton and used the shortcut through this industrial estate next to a park, and that's where the collision happened. And it's, again, there's a lot of what ifs with the offence, because the angle that the lorry hit Paul, that's what knocked him off his bike to the right hand side, right underneath the lorry's wheels. From what all the experts have told me through all the reconstruction, he'd have probably been aware of the jolt behind him, and that'd have been it. The front wheels went over him from his hip all the way up his back and across the back of his head, snapped his neck. Like I say, he just instant death for him. That was the shock of being told that. It just awful. Punch to the stomach, call it whatever you want. It was just, everything sort of started to close in and shut down. Just as I was getting the news, my wife came home from work, so we've had to break the news to her as well. And you sort of not take a step back, but you sort of edit yourself a bit, because that person's in front of you telling these god-awful details, but they're not really sinking in. You've heard the words, your brother's been killed, but it's trying to process that and get your head around it. That's difficult. That's where you need other people with you to get those details. Now, there was part of that afternoon, that evening, where we initially turned around once we'd sort of gathered ourselves a little bit, and asked the officer, said, how's the lorry driver? He's got to be in absolute bits. This has happened. He's saw my brother on the road. How is he coping? And that was the part that kicked us even further, because they had to tell us at that point he tested positive for drugs on a roadside test. He was shown to have cocaine and cannabis in his system. And that then, if you couldn't be kicked further down, does. Because up until that point, you've got the start of the grief of losing a loved one. But hearing that made me very angry. Very, very angry that at 2:30 on a Monday afternoon, somebody's positive for drugs, driving a 34, 35 tonne wagon. So that was sort of then, it took us on a different way of that. And it was hard. It was so hard. Just Paul was my only brother. Our parents had passed away quite a few years ago, so it was just me and him left out of our part of the family. He got no wife, no partner, no kids, lived alone. So it was hard. Thinking the day before we'd been talking about if he wanted to come round for dinner, to that, you're never going to see or speak to him again. And it was just that process of trying to get that part through your head. And then obviously that other part now that we're going to have a court case here, we're going to have a criminal investigation, there's drugs involved, there's other offences involved. So you couldn't even think, right, we can move on, we can start putting things in place and getting plans done. You can't, because you've got a long way ahead and answers to try and find. So the police were brilliant with us. We had family liaison officers allocated to us that came out the next morning. They turned out to be friends for life. Little Glyn and Tim forever will be there for me, and an amazing job that they've done. But it was like they're having to then give us, for want of better, the gory details to tell us what's actually happened and what the process is going on now. They brought some of Paul's belongings back, and that was another kick, because it's real, but then when somebody's handing you the clothes he was wearing, his iPod, it's sort of like, and it was hard. Those first few days was very, very difficult to even comprehend of, like, what do we do now? What's got to be done? And even the fact that in the back of my head I knew I've got to deal with all Paul's things. He's got no one else. There's no one else to turn to. This is falling onto me at the same time as dealing with my grief and my anger about what happened. But again, the FLOs were like, they'd say, right, you can start to do this, you can start to plan things. They gave us the fact that we could start to plan his funeral, even though we had to wait for his body to be released. But it was those initial few days were a blur, were just sleepless days, sleepless nights, stumbling from one thing to another, trying to comprehend the fact that I'd never see Paul again. It was, like I said, through the job, I've seen a lot of horrible things. I've given that bad news to so many people, but when it's you do feel alone, feel completely alone. It's you that it's ever happened to, there's no one else affected. But it's a massive ripple effect that went out. Telling family that we'd got, Paul's friends, Paul's workplace, having to repeat the same details over and over again, to the point where you had to say, enough's enough, I need a break and I need that. But through the process and through the start of the offence, it's the one thing I didn't realise I had to do, which looking back I should have done because of the job I do and I know these things happen. I had to go and identify Paul's body at the end of the week. Formal processes. And again, like I say, that Monday when he was killed, that sticks in my head. And the Friday at the end of that week, again, sticks in my head, because no matter how much family liaison explained what was going to happen and what to expect when I went through that door to make the identification, it could not get me ready for what it was. I walked in and literally Paul's there, and they had to explain to me that they had to place him at a certain angle and they had to cover most of him up because of the trauma and damage to his body that they didn't want me to see. But it's that, and again, it's one of those images, one of the visions that see Paul on that trolley in that room, day in, day out. And it was, again, it brought me down. And that was how things went, really, for the early part of that. be thinking, thinking about Paul, the tears had come, break down again, and then the tears and sadness, I'd be then thinking about the driver, so the anger would kick in, and that would then send me up into a rage, and after that, the tears would start again. So it was just emotionally destroying, and you do, it's like I say, you feel completely alone. Even though I've got a family around me, I couldn't open up and share to them about how I was feeling. I couldn't tell them anything. They didn't know how to approach me or talk to me. It was just a horrible, horrible time. And you sort of think, when's it going to end? When do we get to move on? When do we get to be a normal family again? If will we ever? And it was just trying to process that, and it might sound corny, but it was that flame inside had gone. From the moment I got told that news, inside, I was just destroyed inside. And it was just stumbling through. We went on, we planned the funeral. We kept being in touch with the guys on the investigation team about what was happening, the interviews that had been taking place and how things were progressing. And like I said, Glyn, the main FLO on this, kept me up to date, if you needed to, daily, if weekly, however it was. It was brilliant. But it was still, to me, it was dragging. It was really, really, I wanted, I was thinking of things with my copper's head. Probably was the wrong way to do it, because in my head I was thinking, you've got the evidence, you've got it on CCTV, you've got the tachograph, you've got the drugs results, what's to be discussed and what's to hold it up and hold it up. But then, like I say, I should have thought, CPS can't and won't rush things. And like I say, that went on probably for about 4 months after that. We buried Paul just before Christmas 2018. And I think it was in April, the FLO's got in touch with us, Glyn called me to say that he'd been charged. But he had to explain that it wasn't death by dangerous driving, which was what they were looking at initially, but it was death by careless due to unfit through drink and drugs. And when he explained it, because initially it was like, no, you just want death by dangerous, that's what it is. But when Glyn explained what it actually was, it made sense. And it didn't change the anger though, because again, I was still angry at what the driver had done, thinking he was fit to drive at that point, not stopping at a junction and hitting Paul and killing him. But it was a little bit of, right, we've got a date for court, we know when this is going to happen. So I could try to move on. Let's say move on, it may be the wrong thing to say. Live your life day to day, and that's literally how it was. It was, right, we can try and put it to one side, live a normal life as we can. We've got the court date coming up in June. We can just carry on, we'll get to court, we'll get it finalised, and then hopefully we can technically put it all to rest, and move on with it. And it was just, the only thing it was from that point out was just me. I didn't realise at the time, but I was just spiralling down. The anger was getting more and more. I didn't know how to cope with that. I didn't know how to release it, get rid of it. I didn't know how to be Steve anymore. Which, again, when you're in that position, you don't realise how you're affecting your family. And that was, looking back, that was a hard bit when I realised what I was doing. But because you just, everything's about you, yourself, everything's your little world. How am I going to cope with this? I knew my wife Kaz and the boys were going through the same, but it was just me. Didn't want to know about how they were feeling because I had to keep myself focused. And that anger just built and built and built, and it was destroying us. Didn't realise it at the time, And it was, I'd come back from work, sit myself in the chair, not talk to nobody, grunt at people a few times maybe. So it was horrible for my family to live with. But in my head I was thinking, everything will change once we get to court, we get the verdict, we can move on. So that was my hope, that was my little light at the end of the tunnel. And we got to court in early June. And as we've gone through this, there was like little surreal moments. And again, that day in that court, I still remember, I'd recently had an operation and I was on crutches. We've got into court and the foyer reception, whatever you call it, was packed. There was one seat spare and this lad moved his jacket, and because I was on the crutches, he said, take a seat. Sat down, Glyn had already gone off to go and find the barrister. And I'm sat there, with foot in the air. And all at the time, I knew the driver's name, because I'd obviously been told it and I'd seen it in a report. And I heard from the opposite side another barrister shout his name to get him ready. And when I heard it, I'm thinking, where is he? It was the lad that was sat next to me that moved his jacket. And at that moment, as I've looked across at him, I saw Glyn coming down with our barrister, and the look on Glyn's face was like, oh. So it was like, and the driver's got up and he's gone his way, and Glyn's kind of was on, and I was like, what could you do? You watched that, I needed a seat. So that was the first time I saw him, and he looked like just an average bloke, nothing extreme different about him. So we've got in court, and I remember him coming into the dock, and that was where my opinion changed at that point, because he appeared at that point like, not arrogant, I could say arrogant, I know because that's what I said, but that was the opinion, that was how he came over. He was showing no emotion, no nothing. But I just sat there and I again, got my copper's head on me, we've got the evidence. Let's get through this, let him get, convicted, whatever, and sentenced, so we can move on. They read out the charges, and the judge says, how do you plead? And when I heard the words, not guilty, that, it just echoed in my head, and couldn't help it. Said a few things I probably shouldn't have done. Judge asked me to keep calm, because I couldn't process the fact that you've got all this evidence against you and you're going not guilty. You're going to put us through a trial because you've gone not guilty. And that moment, there's been lots of it through this journey. The anger disappeared, but it was replaced with hatred. And I've never felt anything like that before, and I've never felt, and it was powerful. I just wanted to get to him. He was saying these things, and I couldn't believe it. I've got Kaz holding me from the one side, Glyn the other side. In fact, I was on crutches. I wouldn't have been able to go across the courtroom anyway, but it broke me. I didn't, again, it's that thing, you don't think you can get kicked any lower. But hearing not guilty just, kicked me as low as I thought I could get. And that was it was adjourned 6 months. There was going to be a pre-trial in November, but the main trial would be in December. I think it was nearly the week before Christmas. So I got 6 months to go through that. And I couldn't get my head around it. And that was my world. And I just kept thinking it over again. And the visions that I see Paul's on that trolley when I ID'd him, and I saw the driver in the dock saying not guilty. It just, again, down and down and down. The further I went down, the higher the anger and the more the hatred was. And it went on and on through probably about 2, nearly 3 months, to the point, and I was still saying the hate was there, and something as silly, I say silly, my youngest son had to go to the GPs about something completely irrelevant. His Kaz took him, and he had a bit of a breakdown at the GPs, saying how scared he was of his dad, of how I was acting, and how he was scared that I might do something silly. And when they've come back from the GP, again, one of them bits that sticks in your head, I was in the utility room, folded up some washing. Kaz's book came through and they've gone, tell your dad what you've said to the GP. And he just regurgitated it. And we both broke down. And that was, thankfully, a kick up the bum that I needed. Because it was literally like a light went off to say, you got to ask for some help. So next day, found the GPs, booked in to see them, got diagnosed with depression, anxiety, put on some medication, but also that gave me the little spur to speak to people at work, because I know the help's out there at work for things like this. But again, it's having that, I needed that courage to do it. And when Cameron spoke to me, and that was it, I thought, I've got to do this. I've got 3 months to go till I'm facing him in court. I need something. And I was at work, and again, it was like over a few days, and I would sit there just mulling over, how do I do this? What do I do? How do I get from this broken shell to standing in court and facing him? And it just kept mulling over, like, right, I hate him, this is what's killing me, the hatred. What's the opposite? How can I turn this around? And then I was like, well, and whether it's divine intervention, whether it's just the case, the conversations I overheard in the office, people kept talking about things, and the one word kept cropping up, forgiveness. And it was mulling over my head. I hate him, that's destroying me. The other end of the scale, if I could forgive him, maybe I could learn to live again. So again, rolled it around my head for a few days. And then I spoke to Kaz, and I was like, I've made a decision. And I said, what I've got to do to get me better, to make us better, I'm going to forgive what the driver did. I said, can't forgive his actions because that was wrong, but as one human to another, so that I can live, I'm going to forgive him because I have to, because I can't carry on this way. Carry on this, there's probably only going to be one outcome, and that's not going to be good. I said, so I need to learn how to forgive him. And then I had the discussion with my sergeant at work, who saw what I was asking, referred me into occupational health, got me some help that way, got me some counselling. But also there was a guy on the team that I worked on at the time, who was a pastor outside of work, who had got the counselling through their church, specific counselling about learning how to forgive. And all that together was just brilliant, because after each session, which was really strange because I'd got all the answers inside me, I knew them, it was just getting them out and talking about it. And after each session, how I described it to everyone I spoke to about, it was my suit of armour. I needed that protection to stand in that court and listen to what was going to be said for however long the trial went on. And after each session, I felt stronger and stronger and stronger, to the point where, and it was one of those when I didn't realise at the time, but I could talk about Paul without breaking into tears. I could talk about the driver without feeling like I wanted to put my hands around his throat. And that was quite strange at the time. So I was like, ooh, okay, let's go with this. And I thought, and I felt as good as I could from what had happened over the past 12 months or so at the time. And it worked. It really did. That forgiveness worked. And we went on and we got there, and it was, I was terrified about that trial, really was. Yes, you're going to hear the details, yes, you're going to see what's going to happen, and in my head, as long as I got the guilty plea, I wasn't, as silly as it sounds, I wasn't too concerned about the sentence, because I know with all the legalities, he might not get custodial, he might not get, but I wanted that guilty. I wanted him to accept what he'd done was wrong, so I wanted that guilty plea. I just didn't expect, as silly as it is, the detail that came out in the trial. Now, we were in the courtroom, sitting next to his family that turned up, and the one thing I noticed was when I saw him for the first time, I recalled that initial court appearance back in June, when he had the arrogance, the swagger, and I was this little broken thing. Roles had swapped. Now, I looked at him, and he looked broken, and I was sort of standing there. I was like, well, okay, and then I realised then that when in that initial court appearance, he didn't turn up with any family, he was on his own. That was probably his suit of armour for him to get through that process. There was no arrogance, it was just the fact. He was terrified, and that's the only way he could get through that. Listening to the driver give his version, he couldn't really say much apart from apologise. He kept apologising. We knew he was sorry. Nobody wants to do that. He didn't set out to kill Paul. But he didn't actually give any explanation why he done what he done, why he didn't stop at the junction, why he didn't look. The evidence was there, and he did. It ripped him apart. He hadn't got a leg to stand on. So yeah, we've gone through all that. Jury got retired. It was quite late in the day, I remember. And the RFLO at the time, it was Tim that took me through the court. And he was like, he said, you'll probably get stood down, sent home, come back tomorrow. Which, to be fair, after, I think that was the third day, I was like, yeah, I could do with the break. They called us back into court, and he was like, yeah, it was on in anyway, the jury had been out. And he said, yeah, he says, that'll be it, we'll be off home. As we walked in, the usher was there out the door, and he went, got a verdict. To which, like, I've never had my stomach empty so much in my life, and I was like, oh, here we go. And it seemed forever for him to come and get it all out, and the judge done his bit of a sum up, and then said, guilty. And all I recall then was squeezing the life out of Kaz's hand, and hearing all the upset from the driver's family next to us, which is, it's quite hard, and friends and family have said, you know, were you celebrating, were you know, high fives, and I was like, no. Inside I was going absolutely crazy, but it wasn't the place to do it with his family next to me. That'd be wrong. That would be wrong. So I left that for when we went back into the family room. And the barrister was straight with us. He said, we've got the guilty. He said, that's half of it. He says, but he said, we've got to be mindful and reasonable about sentencing. It had been adjourned till the end of January. So again, I think it worked out to about 6-7 weeks we've got to wait. So that was that. And I actually thought, you know, we breathed a sigh of relief, got the guilty, got what I wanted. But I remember it driving home. But it was, got in the car, and I was thinking, that was the first time it pinged in my head that, yeah, still haven't had a lot of questions answered. Because the driver's not explained why he's done it, what brought him to that point. All he basically said, I'm really sorry, I thought I'd looked. That was it. That wasn't any answers to me. Maybe it was just the relief after roughly 13 months of living through all that, my set of armour that I built up just crumbled, and just bit by bit, day by day, I felt like I'm not back at square one. I felt I was back further. I was exhausted, couldn't talk to nobody. The anger was coming back, the hatred was coming back, and that scared the life out of me. On top of the fact that I still hadn't got my questions answered. I'd still got so many things I wanted to know. And I just went again, spiralled down and down to the point we're on Boxing Day. And as I hope I never go back there again, contemplated suicide. I wanted to be a ball. Couldn't do it anymore. I just wanted that, stop, enough, I want to get off this ride. Thankfully, as silly as it was, Kaz shouting at me from another room to get me arse ready to go to a family party, again, kicked me into gear of like, right, okay, yeah, let's shelve that. Went out, had as good as a Christmas as we could, was having a conversation, and it clicked in my head, Restorative Justice. We do this at work, and I've done the bit, I've done the training, and I know how good it is. This is sort of what it's made for. And I was like, right, okay, there's a plan, there's an idea. We'll see how it goes at sentencing, see what happens, and then I'll think about that. Can't think about that now, I just want to focus on sentencing. But it was sort of like, oh yeah, we've got this at work that we can refer into, so right, okay. So we got to sentencing. Again, another surreal day of listening to the judge sum up, which seemed to go on forever and ever and ever. And then it was sort of like all that build-up and all that build-up, and then it went very quickly at the end, because he told the driver, he says, Joseph, stand up. And after all that, it was sort of like, right, I think 3.5 years, driving ban, this, that and the other, guards take him down, gone. I didn't even have a chance to look across at him because I was too busy looking at the judge. His family broke down. And again, it was like, right, not the time or place. I always said, and as crass or as it might sound, that was it then, everything was done. And the barrister and Glenn turned around and said, right, we're going to the family room. We've turned to come out of our seats as his family turned. And it was sort of like I locked eyes with his dad. And if it was one of them moments where you'd expect the EastEnders theme tune to start playing, what do you say? What do you do? I think I gave some like half expression of sorry to him, and we went our separate ways, went into the room. I thanked the barrister, thanked the investigation guys, thanked Glenn. We could put an end to it, we could start, but again it was like, I still want to know. So I was like, right, let's just deal with this part. We've left the court. And probably one of the best things I ever did, his family was outside the court, sobbing. And I went over to speak to them. I couldn't walk past and ignore it. And I was talking to his dad. His dad was blaming himself for paying for his, to get his lorry licence so he could, and he's like, if I hadn't done that, your brother would still be riding. And it was like, you've got to try and forgive yourself in regards to that. He's a grown man, he made his choices, he made his decisions. And I spoke to his dad, spoke to his girlfriend, who was there. And they were surprised that I could be so nice. But I explained to them, if this had been 12 months ago, it had been angry Steve that had been there, and it had been a completely different conversation. And I explained what I'd done, what I'd gone through, to the point of saying, this is your turn now. I've done my suffering, my suffering will carry on, but I've got to a good place with myself. You guys have got to start that now, because up till now, he might have got away with it, he might have not been sentenced, but he has. You've got to deal with that now. So be good to each other and, like, you know, sort of look after each other. And that helped further on down the line, which I didn't realise. Because, like I say, got home, and that's when it hit me. I want to know why you've done that. I've got to find out. And Kaz asked me if I was okay with that, and I was like, yeah, because that's what I want to do. Because the anger and the hate wasn't there anymore, but what I'd got was, it was like an empty feeling inside here, a pain. I described it as the elephant's foot on my chest, and I couldn't shift that weeks and weeks after the trial had finished, after the sentencing had been done. That was still there. A couple more counselling sessions, chatting down in the office, nothing shifted that. And the only thing I could think of was, I need to speak to him. So that's when I reached out to Remedi, and spoke to yourself, and we started the ball rolling. And like I say, that conversation outside the court with his family helped, because after the initial approach to him in prison, he spoke with his girlfriend and family, and they explained, he's a nice bloke, he just wants to talk to you, doesn't want to, he's not accusing you of anything, he doesn't want to get his hands on you, just wants to talk to you. And thankfully, he came back with, yeah, I'll meet, we'll get together, we'll do this. And I was ecstatic hearing that news. I think it was sort of summer 2021 when everything was starting to move again. And I got the notification from you guys that, yeah, prisons are open, they're allowing visits. Do you still want to go ahead with it? Yes. And thankfully, Joe did as well. That come back, and I've always said, and when I was talking to you, that you said, like, it's not a quick process, it can take months and months to arrange. But I think from the moment the prison said yes, I said yes, Joe said yeah, he still wants to meet, that it was then, yeah, okay, we've got an appointment in, I think it was a week or 10 days time. It was like, oh, right, okay, let's go for it, let's do it. And sitting down, you got running through everything. I just wanted to know. I didn't want an apology, don't want sorries anymore. I want to know why you've done what you've done to get to that point, getting in the wagon, probably knowing full well you shouldn't because of the amount of drugs you've been taking to this point now. And yeah, we got there, and again, August 23rd, 2021, sticks in my head, sunny crisp morning, pulling up to the prison, meeting yourself and Kim, and then going through. That was, it was weird, because it was like, I want to get in, I want to talk to him, but I'd quite like to sit out in the sunshine and chill for a bit. And then I still remember seeing him being brought in by his prison officer. And again, he looked broken still, he looked there, because one of the things, yeah, I wanted the answers to why he'd done it, but what I'd learned and what I wanted from the RJ was, I wanted him to know that I did actually forgive him. I didn't want him leaving prison with that on hanging over his head, thinking, somebody out there hates me, somebody out there wants to harm me. That's no good to him to move on, because yeah, at the end of the day, you got to move on. I didn't want him doing anything silly, but I also wanted to get over to him, you can't do what you've done. I wanted him to be able to move on with his life, as well as me being able to move on. And if I'd heard months, weeks, whatever later, that he'd gone and done something silly to himself or committed the offence again, that scares me, because I think all that's for nothing. So that's what I wanted to get over to him, that things will be okay. So still remember walking into that room at the prison, and I've never seen a man shake so much as Joe was. And still, he got his arms on his knees, his head was bowed, and his legs were just shaking like it was an earthquake. And as I was approaching him, I was just thinking, you've got to calm him down, because the state he's in, he's not going to be able to talk to you. And again, like the setup is like you can sit wherever you want to. I could have sat 10 foot away from him, but I wanted to be in his face. I wanted to be close to him. And I still remember walking over, putting my hand out, shake his hand, give him a hug, to calm him down. And again, like I say, just from touching him, you could feel the shakes. And it was like, right, chill. And I think the first thing I spoke to him and said to him was, calm down. I just want to talk to you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to shout at you. I want to talk to you. I just want answers from what's happened. And that then, thankfully, got him to open up. And we were able, I think for an hour or two, it went on for Joe to open up, as he did. And it was brilliant. To get that chance to talk to him, all my questions that I wanted answered, he answered and more so. But what I feel was my biggest thing I got from that was when we spoke about the visions that we'd still got. I told Joe about seeing Paul on the trolley when I ID'd him, and how that initially, when I'd got that vision, I'd see that, bang, tears, crying, upset for hours. But now, I still have that, and I will till my dying day. I have that vision, but when I have that vision, I'll talk to him, tell him, ask him how he's, have a chat with my brother, still talk to him. And that's how I processed that and dealt with it. And I had to understand from Joe's perspective. He actually got out of that wagon and saw the state my brother was in. That would have been awful for anyone to see. And that's what he's got to live with. And he told me he saw that every day, all day, every day. That's what he saw. And it broke him. And I explained to him, as I explained to his family, that maybe he needs to forgive himself. I know I keep using the forgiveness, but it worked for me. He's got to accept what he's done. That's never going to change. But you can't live your life if you're holding on to that image, that sight, that hurt. So it was like explaining to Joe, look, if it helps you to be able to not erase that image, but to deal with it by realising, I don't hate you for what you've done. I've forgiven you. If that helps you move on from this point, from when you then get released and live as normal a life as you can, that's what I want from this. And we just, that's how we bounced off each other from that part, talking about that, getting it over. And like I said, I think it was like 2 hours went in the blink of an eye. I've got nothing else that I could say to him without repeating myself over and over and over again. So it sort of did come to a natural conclusion where, again, we hugged. It was nice to not feel him shake. It was good to leave him with, I think, as good a smile on his face as you can get in those situations. I wished him well. I know he'd only got a few months left on his sentence. And I just said, look, again, remember what we spoke about. I don't hate you. There's only one, I'm technically the only person that should point a finger at you, that should judge you, that should want to hate you, but I don't. Everybody else has got an opinion. They're entitled to it. Ignore it. because in my eyes I'm the only one that sort of matters in this, and I've forgiven you. And yeah, that was how it finished. And I walked out, not realising how exhausted I was, but feeling good because I'd got that answers. And it was just amazing to have those answers, to hear the trauma that Joe had gone through in the years, the months previous to that, why he'd done what he'd done, and where we got to. So yeah, that was a bit of a surreal drive home. Got home, spoke about it for a bit with Kaz, and then passed out asleep, up for the rest of the afternoon. That's how tired I was. And it was a fantastic chance to actually speak to him, going through the RJ that's provided. I can't quantify how important that was. And the biggest benefit I've got from that, more so than getting the answers, was that pain in there was still there, but it was about a month after the RJ, I noticed it wasn't as bad, didn't feel as heavy, wasn't as painful. And again, like a few things I've done through all this, I thought, right, I ain't saying anything to anyone, keep my gob shut, we'll see how this goes. And as the weeks and the months progressed, it got less and less and less, to the point it was, I think it was the end of January, February the following year, so probably about 5-6 months after the RJ, I sat there and it was one of those, hang on a moment, I couldn't remember the last time I felt that pain. It had gone. The numbness had gone. I felt relatively human again. And sitting back and thinking about what I'd gone through and what that pain had gone, I described it as my elephant's foot on me. But I do actually think that was a broken heart. I was shattered inside. And having the chance to speak to Joe healed it, healed that broken heart, and allowed me to carry on, allowed me to finally put everything, I suppose, everything behind me that I could. It was always going to be, somebody described it to me as like what you've gone through, it's like you're going to carry that luggage around with you for the rest of your life. Yes, you are. But that luggage starts out with the biggest suitcase you can find. At that point, I've got a little man bag. I could put it into that. And that was my biggest thing from that it made me feel normal again. And that's where it took me. I couldn't thank everybody enough, from Remedi, from setting it up, having the opportunity to speak and get that over, because I don't know where I'd be at this point if I hadn't have had that opportunity to talk to Joe.